Antanina Ricceri, and this is Louise Matthews, and we're researching on IISA's militancy, resources, and organized crime programs in West Africa and Horn of Africa. Louise has been doing some research about Guinea Bissau, which has recently been labeled as Africa's first narco state. What can you tell us about the significance of that development?
Well, the term narco state has become quite politicised, like the term failed state, and ultimately it hasn't really precipitated a lot of international response. There are still very few international missions in Guinea-Bissau, despite the fact that it's widely known that this is the destination for drug traffickers from Central America. As drug demand grows in the UK and Europe more widely, we're seeing increased shipments of cocaine in particular coming across the Atlantic and landing in Guinea-Bissau. The rest of West Africa have tried to clamp down on the trade, but this has actually just shifted cartels more intensely into Guinea-Bissau. So there's been greater violence, greater militancy, but also greater exploitation of the local people. The trade is also benefiting local militant groups and also international militant groups. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the research that you've been doing on international militancy in West Africa.
Yes. I've been doing research on Boko Haram most recently, and I have a publication up on our website which is Boko Haram, the West, and the Power of Perception. I think it's really interesting hearing about your comments about that and thinking about how the resources have played into Boko Haram's militancy. Recently they've been having a bit more cross-border activity than they have had in the past. And this also includes their training with AQIM and trafficking those poor schoolgirls across the borders into Cameroon and Chad. And they still don't know where they are. But I think that the international community's response to this conflict has been a little bit strange, considering that it's all part of a bigger problem of human trafficking, which I know you've been looking into as well.
Yeah, my latest research, which will be coming out soon on the website, has been looking at the human trafficking trade in West Africa, and it's very interlinked with organised militancy, with the drug trade, because ultimately it's about exploiting people. Originally it was mainly younger children who were trafficked, who were abducted and taken from West Africa to Central Africa as labourers, or often sold into sex work, prostitution, etc. But now we're seeing a growing problem of sort of younger women being trafficked, particularly from Nigeria, Niger, Mali, Mauritania, into Europe. Again, often interlinked with the drug trade. They're used as mules, but then once they reach Europe, they're often sort of bound up in these gangs and forced into prostitution. Now, it's a trade which is growing. The UN has recently talked about how this is something that concerns everybody in West Africa and in Europe, and there needs to be more of an international response to this. But as yet, nothing concrete has actually come out. So I think that also relates back to the international response to Boko Haram.
Well, I think one of the reasons that the recent kidnapping attack got as much attention as it did was because of the girls and the way that the social media has really picked up on this incident. You can see a sort of CNN effect, which is when the media kind of puts the onus on the international community to do something, and certain conflicts are deemed as more worthy or less worthy. So I think that the victimization of women is something that's historically been used to justify intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan. And a lot of Nigerians are also afraid that this will lead to a greater US or Western presence.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. A lot of the concern that's been coming, particularly from the Nigerian media, is that this will just be used as a front for greater intervention in West Africa. And the latest FCA report on their presence in West Africa has actually cited that they don't have a heavy enough footprint, and then they need to learn more about the region and how it links up with the Horn of Africa. States such as Somalia, which is seen as classically failed states, they're worried that that model will spread across the Sahara as militancy and AQIM also spreads. Thank you for joining us both today. You can find more of our work on the IISA website.